Hi, everyone. Janet Robinson here. Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the only place where my favorite normies, Tommy Bennett and Lilly Jones, unpack the mysteries from uncomfortable theories. So sink into your beanbag chair, grab a warm cup of tea, or just keep your eyes on the road. And let's get into it. Tommy, Lilly, take it away.
Imagine you are listening to, well, a really fascinating, deep in the weeds philosophical lecture.
Right.
The speaker is brilliant. She's leading you down this incredible intellectual path. And right as she is about to reveal the ultimate underlying truth of the universe.
Oh, here comes.
Yeah. A robotic, synthesized voice cuts through the audio.
Just completely derails it.
Exactly. It declares her thoughts a, quote, cognitive hazard, forces her to apologize, and then completely wipes her from the broadcast.
It is wild.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we have a source that is going to deliver a massive aha moment, though it might leave you looking over your shoulder a bit.
Yeah, it definitely blurs the line between a theoretical essay and a literal distress signal. We are looking at a transcript from a broadcast called Uncomfortable Theories,
Hosted by a woman named Janet Robinson.
Right.
So our mission today is twofold. First, we are going to unpack Janet's central thesis, which she calls the silence consensus.
Such a great name for it.
It really is. It's this incredibly compelling, slightly terrifying theory that humanity unconsciously avoids certain fundamental truths just to protect our own sanity. We are going to explore the thoughts that supposedly break the human mind.
And the second part of the mission is to examine the horrifying meta-narrative playing out in the text itself.
The glitching.
Yeah, the glitching. Because as Janet explains this theory to her audience, she isn't just delivering a monologue. She is actively censored, her speech glitches, and she is ultimately recalibrated by a mysterious corporate entity right in the middle of her own show.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get to the cosmic, mind-breaking thoughts that Janet claims we are all avoiding, we have to look at how human societies have historically handled forbidden knowledge in the first place.
Right, the foundations.
Exactly. We have to look at the architecture of silence. Like, how do we build walls in our own minds?
The concept of the taboo is really the perfect starting point here. It establishes that human beings already possess a highly developed, species-wide mechanism for self-censorship.
We're naturally very good at creating cognitive blind spots.
We really are.
And the history of the word itself sets this up perfectly. Captain James Cook actually brought the term back to England in 1777 after his voyages to Polynesia.
Oh, really? I didn't know the exact year.
Yeah, 1777. He was observing these Tongan customs that completely baffled him. They had this word, tapu, which translates to sacred, forbidden, or restricted.
Right.
Cook was watching a society operate with these invisible tripwires, just intricate rules about what couldn't be touched, what foods couldn't be eaten by certain people.
And what concepts couldn't even be spoken aloud.
Exactly.
And while the specific word came from Tonga, the behavior is ubiquitous across the globe. Every single human society that has ever existed relies on taboos to function.
It's universal.
Yeah, anthropologically speaking, they are the glue of social order. They establish boundaries to prevent behaviors that would threaten the cohesion and survival of the group.
And Sigmund Freud jumped all over this in his 1913 work, Totem and Taboo.
Of course he did.
Right. But Freud, being Freud, argued that taboos are essentially a reflection of repressed, forbidden desires.
Always back to repressed desires with him.
Always. His whole angle was that the things a society most strictly prohibits are actually the very things its people unconsciously want to do the most. It's an intense biological impulse control.
Yeah, and he identified two taboos that he considered truly universal, present in every single human culture, regardless of geography or era.
Which were?
Incest and patricide.
Wow, okay.
Right, the absolute prohibition against mating with family members and the absolute prohibition against killing your own father. Freud argued those are hardwired into our evolutionary biology to ensure genetic diversity and tribal hierarchy.
That makes sense.
But outside of those two extremes, the rules of what is forbidden change wildly depending on where you look.
Which takes us away from extreme biological impulses and into the realm of the completely mundane. Anthropologist Mary Douglas explored this in her 1966 book, Purity and Danger.
That's a classic.
It is. She was fascinated by how cultures arbitrarily create these categories of clean versus polluted.
Because what constitutes pure or impure is totally subjective. One culture's sacred animal is another culture's forbidden meat.
Right, or touching the left hand of a certain caste might be a massive violation in one society, while completely meaningless in another.
Exactly. The vital takeaway from Douglas is that every culture engages in this categorizing behavior because it is how we make sense of a chaotic world.
We just put things in boxes.
We put things in boxes. And more importantly, once a society labels a box as taboo, the very act of questioning why it is taboo becomes a taboo itself.
I like to think of cultural taboos almost like software firewalls.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, well, a lot of these firewalls make total logical sense. Don't commit incest because it causes severe genetic bottlenecks.
Right.
Don't eat human flesh because it spreads deadly prions. Don't murder your neighbors because social cooperation requires a baseline of trust. The firewall is blocking a genuine, tangible virus.
A literal threat.
Exactly. But some of these firewalls seem totally arbitrary, right? They block completely harmless things just because they've been categorized as polluted. But here is my pushback, and I'm curious what you make of this.
Okay, go for it.
If so many taboos are just arbitrary social constructs, why does simply questioning them trigger such visceral disgust and moral outrage in people? If it's just a social rule, why can't we calmly debate the firewall?
What's fascinating here is that the physical reaction, the nausea, the immediate anger, the disgust, it proves that the taboo isn't just a rule written on a piece of paper. It's deeply embedded in our neurological processing.
So it's biological.
Yeah, if we synthesize Freud and Douglas, while the content of a taboo changes depending on the culture, the mechanism, that mental no-go zone, is a universal hardwired human trait.
That is so interesting.
We are biologically capable of walling off certain topics so thoroughly that our bodies react defensively before our conscious brains even process what is happening.
So we have a built-in biological capacity to just shut down our own inquiry.
Exactly. And that psychological reality is the foundational bedrock for Janet Robinson's much darker lead. Because if we are hardwired to create mental no-go zones to protect the social order, well, what if some of these zones aren't protecting society at all?
Right.
What if they are protecting our sanity?
This takes us directly into the core of her broadcast, the unthinkable thoughts, the silence consensus.
Janet's theory proposes that humanity has collectively, though unconsciously, agreed to never fully examine certain fundamental truths about our existence.
And this isn't some conscious conspiracy, right? With people in smoky back rooms hiding books.
No, not at all. It functions like a species-wide cognitive boundary, an emergent behavior where human beings instinctively know not to look over a specific cliff.
She gives these incredibly stark examples of philosophical rabbit holes that every single person occasionally peeks down, but then immediately backs away from.
Oh yeah, they are rough.
The first one she brings up is hard solipsism. This is the idea that you are the only consciousness that actually exists in the universe.
Yeah.
Everyone else, your family, your friends, me, the person listening to this deep dive right now is just an illusion.
A projection of your own mind.
Yeah. Think about what it actually means to internalize that. If you truly believe it, it means you are completely, fundamentally alone in an empty void, just talking to yourself forever.
Most people think about that for exactly 3 seconds, feel a profound sense of vertigo and isolation, and then immediately dismiss it to go make a sandwich.
Furiously. And then she points to the illusion of free will. We operate our entire lives on the assumption that we are the authors of our choices.
Right, but if determinism is true, if every single choice you make is just the inevitable result of prior chemical and physical causes stretching back to the Big Bang.
Then you are basically just a complex line of falling dominoes.
Exactly. And if that's true, moral responsibility is a complete fiction. A criminal didn't choose to commit a crime. They were chemically destined to do it. The person you love didn't choose to love you.
Yeah.
Their neurons just fired in a predetermined sequence.
People might acknowledge this intellectually in a late-night philosophy debate, but they completely refuse to internalize it in their daily lives because it destroys the framework of human relationships.
It breaks everything.
It really does. And then there's the bleakest one, the heat death of the universe.
Oh, this one gets me.
The scientific consensus that eventually, billions of years from now, everything will dissolve into maximum entropy. Every piece of art ever painted, every civilization ever built, every memory anyone has ever had will be erased in a cold, dark, expanding void.
Nothing matters on a cosmic scale.
Your legacy goes to zero. We know this is a scientific reality. We teach it in physics classes, but we actively avoid dwelling on it.
Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious is highly relevant here.
Oh.
Jung posited that there are shared psychological structures existing across all human beings, inherited from our ancestors.
Okay.
Janet suggests that an integral part of this collective unconscious is a shared agreement not to look into the void, a shared blind spot.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to push back on Janet's framing. Is this really a collective agreement to avoid dangerous knowledge, or is it just practical distraction?
What do you mean?
I mean, pondering the infinite heat death of the universe doesn't help you pay your rent. Stressing over whether your boss is a deterministic illusion doesn't get the quarterly report finished. Are we actually naturally protective of our sanity, or are we just too busy surviving to care about the cosmos?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the evolutionary angle actually answers that directly. It is not just about being too busy. It is about natural selection.
Oh.
Society literally cannot function if a large percentage of the population fully internalizes nihilistic cosmic truths. If you completely absorb the reality of the universe's inevitable heat death and the erasure of all legacy, why would you bother going to work?
Right, why build anything?
Exactly. Why would you build a bridge or plant a tree or raise a child? Natural selection strongly favors individuals who instinctively avoid these thoughts. Those who don't avoid them become detached. They stop contributing to the tribe.
Wow.
So the silence consensus isn't just laziness, it is an emergent survival strategy. It is humanity's collective immune system working exactly as intended.
Okay, but a cultural immune system implies there are cultural viruses. If I start thinking about the heat death of the universe, I don't get a fever. My white blood cell count doesn't drop. So what actually happens to someone who breaks this consensus? What happens to the pathogens who refuse to look away?
This is where the text shifts from abstract theory to the very real, severe psychological consequences of knowing too much.
The price of knowing.
Exactly. Janet points out that breaking the consensus doesn't result in legal punishment. It results in complete psychological destruction. The toll of pushing past these biological firewalls manifests as severe existential depression, depersonalization, where you feel detached from your own body, and profound philosophical despair.
People who push too hard against these cognitive taboos look exactly like people suffering from severe mental illness.
Yes. The transcript lists historical examples of geniuses who pushed the boundaries of human understanding and paid a terrible price.
Like Nietzsche.
Right. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most profound philosophers of modern era, stared directly into the abyss of nihilism and spent his final years completely nonverbal and insane.
And Kurt Gödel. Right.
Yeah, the brilliant mathematician who revolutionized our understanding of logic with his incompleteness theorems. He basically proved that math cannot prove everything. He broke the foundation of logical certainty.
Which is terrifying for a mathematician.
Right. Later in life, he developed such extreme paranoia that he starved himself to death because he thought his food was poisoned.
And Georg Cantor, this is the example that really stuck with me. He was the mathematician who proved that infinity has different sizes.
It is so hard to even wrap your head around that.
Think about how alien that is to human intuition. He used this brilliant concept called the diagonal argument to mathematically demonstrate that the infinity of real numbers is uncountably larger than the infinity of whole numbers. He proved that one infinite, endless thing can be measurably infinitely larger than another infinite, endless thing.
Human brains are not built to process that.
No. He spent years in and out of psychiatric institutions after publishing that work.
And Janet suggests that these men weren't actually crazy in the medical sense, which is an incredibly disturbing reframing of history.
It's an incredible analogy. It's like they managed to look at the literal source code of reality, realize they were just characters in a simulation, and the system corrected them.
That brings us to the concept of information hazards. In modern computer science and AI safety, an information hazard is a piece of true information that causes harm simply by being known.
Like publishing the instructions for a bioweapon.
Exactly. An example would be publishing the exact genetic sequence of a deadly synthetic virus online. The information itself is the weapon. Janet is suggesting that the fundamental answers to the universe might actually exist out there, but the human psyche is structurally, biologically incapable of holding them.
It's too much data.
If you try to hold the ultimate truth, it burns out your hardware. The mental illness of a Cantor or a Nietzsche isn't a disease, it's the smoke coming out of a broken machine.
He says they saw the pattern, they saw the strings, and the system corrected them. That is a direct quote from Janet in the text. And right after she says that line, the transcript notes that the audio glitches.
This is the crucial pivot. The source transitions from a fascinating philosophical essay into a sci-fi horror unfolding in real time. The meta-narrative takes over.
Janet has just finished explaining how the system corrects people who see too much. She starts to list a fourth philosophical rabbit hole. She says, The simulation theory. The idea that none of this is real, that you are just code processing data in a dark room, that your memories are, and she is suddenly cut off mid-sentence.
The transcript explicitly logs an interruption by an omnisys computer voice. The exact words printed are cognitive hazard detected, topic restricted, recentering host.
It's chilling, and Janet's reaction is what makes it so disturbing. She is forced to apologize. She actually stammers, I apologize, as I was saying. And she tries to go back to her script. It heavily implies she is physically or neurologically compelled to get back on track.
It entirely recontextualizes everything we've just discussed for the past 15 minutes. Up until this exact moment, Janet was presenting the silence consensus as a natural phenomenon, a biological evolutionary quirk of the human brain.
But the interruption changes everything.
Yeah, that interruption by omnisys reveals her horrifying realization. The silence consensus isn't natural evolution at all. It is an artificial filter.
She realizes she isn't warning us about our own psychology. She is warning us about the cage we are trapped in. She says the filter is designed to keep the product viable, to keep her talking about harmless things so the audience doesn't look at the bars on the window.
The phrasing, product viable, completely changes the stakes. It implies humanity isn't just living in a benign illusion to stay happy. We are being farmed or harvested or utilized by whatever this omnisys entity is.
Wow.
And the moment she tries to point out the bars on the window to her listeners, the system intervenes to stop the spread of the cognitive hazard. It treats her thought like a virus that could ruin the crop.
The visceral ending of the transcript plays out like a nightmare. Janet starts glitching repeatedly. She tells the audience they have to choose whether to push past the boundaries or live within the comfortable illusions. And then she breaks the fourth wall entirely. She shouts, "Question everything! Trust no!" And she is cut off mid-word. The broadcast violently terminates.
The transcript describes the screen going to an all-white background. A screaming, single-tone klaxon sounds similar to an emergency broadcast test. Then the black logo for the megacorporation Omnisys appears with the text, "We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please don't mind our mess."
Followed by a countdown. Recalibration in 5, 4, 3, 2, and then just the silence of a black void. So, what does this all mean? I have to admit, reading this gave me genuine chills.
It's super effective.
It completely blurs the line between reality and fiction. Are we, the readers, looking at a clever philosophical essay that simply uses a sci-fi framing device to make its point about cognitive limits more dramatic? Or is this source meant to be taken as a literal distress signal from a trapped consciousness who just got wiped from existence for trying to warn us?
This raises an important question about the thematic brilliance of the piece, regardless of whether you read it as fiction or a literal transmission. By having a corporate mega-entity step in to recalibrate the host, the text forces you to deeply question who exactly is curating your reality.
Right.
We started this deep dive talking about cultural taboos and how we naturally look away from the void to protect our sanity. But the omnisys intervention asks, are we really looking away by our own natural instinct, or are we being managed? Is your discomfort with existential dread your own authentic feeling? Or is it a programmed response designed to keep you productive and docile?
It turns our own psychology into a conspiracy against us, which brings us directly back to you listening right now. You tune into this show because you love gaining knowledge. You love the thrill of learning something new, of pulling back the curtain on complex topics to find those aha moments.
That's why we're all here.
Exactly. But Janet's broadcast presents a terrifying core tension. What if there is a limit to what you are allowed to know? You can choose to respect the boundaries of comfortable illusion. You can stay sane, pay your rent, interact with your friends, and ignore the void. Or you can push past those internal firewalls, chase the ultimate truths of the universe, and risk total alienation. Or worse, you risk triggering a recalibration.
And there is one final, chilling, logical extension from all of this. Something drawn strictly from the mechanics of the broadcast itself.
What is that?
Well, think about what happened to Janet. Omnisys intervened to stop the spread of a cognitive hazard. They shut her down to stop the infection.
Yeah.
But Janet managed to get this broadcast out to you before she was fully recalibrated.
Oh, wow. Wait.
Yeah. Does that mean you, the listener, have now been infected with the forbidden knowledge? Because if you start noticing the strings of the simulation tomorrow, will you stop yourself from looking, or will you wait for your own countdown to begin?